This is the first attempt we're going to make to see how these types of slideshows work for sports administration classes, to see if this works better for students to have the material that we can talk about ahead of time. Then you can come into class and ask questions about anything that you might have seen in this presentation. This first one is obviously for SPAD 320, the Facilities Management course. This is an introductory presentation. We're going to talk about some overview and introductory items, very short, and then the following class, if you have questions, we'll follow up on these. One of the first questions we're going to ask is, what is facility management? So there are various definitions out there. I've not found one that I like. It's kind of hard to describe for a lot of people. I don't see a lot of consistent definitions out there. For some people, it's the actual running of the facility, the person who manages it on the day-to-day operations and oversees everything. For other people, it might be the planning and the managing of the sports events in a facility. Obviously, I'm using sports events because this is a sports administration major. It doesn't necessarily have to be sports events. It can be craft fairs. It can be Disney on Ice and entertainment. It can be concerts. You might have facilities that have no sports in them, or very rarely, and then you might have other sports that are primarily sports events. Regardless, some people look at the planning and managing of those events in a facility as what facility management is. For other people, they consider it to be the construction of a facility, or the reworking or refurbishment or something of a facility. For many people, it's all of these things. In a person's career, you might have someone whose expertise is in making sure that a facility gets designed and gets built properly, that it gets opened, that it's staffed properly, that it has its policies. Then that person might move on to the next facility. Whereas you might have another person at a facility for 20 years, and that person runs the facility, oversees the events, the event managers that work there, the booking of the venue's events, all kinds of different things. So depending on what a person is good at in his or her career might determine how they view facility management. Arenas versus stadiums. What's the difference? Most people, I think, would understand that arenas are generally closed buildings. We'll get into this when we talk about stadiums. Stadiums are starting to be, some of them, enclosed, but generally an arena is looked upon as a closed building. It can be multi-purpose use or it can be single-purpose use. I think most times today, at least in the United States, you will find most arenas are going to be multi-purpose use. They want to recoup that money. There aren't a lot of places out there who have the money to have those arenas up and operating and have nothing going on in there, meaning no money coming in from concerts or family events or whatever it might be. So although they can be single use, single purpose, I don't think that that's something that you're going to see a lot out there, although it does exist. Generally, an arena has a floor that will fit a basketball court or an ice hockey rink. Something of that nature, of that size in there. And then it's going to often have tiered seating around that floor area, around that main floor area. The seating capacity, usually most arenas, the biggest that you'll generally see, not always, but generally the most common size, I guess, is somewhere between 20 and 25,000 for a large seat arena. Somewhere like the Carrier Dome might be exceptions, or when they hold an NCAA tournament in a much, much bigger venue than is normally held, than a basketball game is normally held, you might see something bigger. But generally 20 to 25,000 when you look at NBA arenas and things such as that. And it can go down to the low thousands, especially for maybe an NBA development league team or something that is just generally for not sports events maybe, but local events, concerts, family events, those types of things. For a stadium, they're often open structures. Obviously, we have all seen, since the Astrodome, that stadiums can have a roof on them. Some of them have retractable roofs. If you're dealing with something out in Phoenix, if you're dealing with something in, let's see, Toronto is one that had a retractable roof. There are various places, but generally they're open structures is how most people see them. They're often oval, round, or U-shaped. Generally, then they'll have some type of seating around it, whether it's in boomerang style seating or whether it's tiered. It just depends on what the actual structure looks like. Generally have a playing surface, obviously surrounded by seats. Again, it can be boomerang style seating or it can be tiers of seats, depending on the shape of the facility or the stadium. Seating capacity can be anywhere from 20,000 when you're talking something such as an MLS stadium, something built for specifically for MLS. It can be much smaller if you're talking about a minor league baseball park. It could be 5 to 10,000, maybe even 3,000. And then you've got some behemoth stadiums, not just here in the United States, but other places. In the United States, the obvious ones are the Big House at Michigan and Tennessee, University of Tennessee's stadium. Neyland Stadium. Well, both of those seat over 105,000. The Shoe at Ohio State, they can accommodate that to seat over 100,000 or somewhere around 100,000. So there are huge facilities out there, and they're not all in the United States. Brazil, when you're talking about soccer stadiums, those types of things, they are out there. Those behemoth stadiums. When you're talking about facilities and events, those go hand in hand. Generally, a facility is not going to be built unless it's going to house an event. And again, we're talking about sports facilities, not dealing with recreational facilities in this particular discussion. But they do go hand in hand. Event managers need to understand facilities because they need to understand how long does it take to set something up, depending on the facility and how move-in goes, and what types of storage do they have. What is it? How do contracts work? What ancillary benefits do they have, or what ancillary services do they have that they can offer to third-party clients who may be coming in for an event? Facility managers need to understand events. They need to know how long does it take to set up those events? How many people do they need to have? Is it something that is very rowdy where they need to have more security for a certain type of event than they do for another type of event? Is an event heavily geared towards women where issues of restrooms and needing more restrooms, or can't really put more restrooms in, but somehow being able to accommodate or knowing that you're going to have that issue? What type of event is coming in? So events and facilities generally go hand in hand. For sports venues, let's talk some numbers to give you an idea of what's out there as far as potential and what's being built. We can look from 2007 to 2010 when we're talking just about arenas. 34 arenas were built worldwide in that short time span, spending about $4.4 billion. So quite a number of places out there, any one of which you could be working at sometime in the future. In 2008, just in the US alone, $3.34 billion was spent on new sports facilities. Again, that's not just arenas, that could be stadiums, it could be recreational facilities, depends on how they're defining sports facilities. But the point being that there is a significant amount of money being spent on this. This could be a possible career future for you. Why not just upgrade these facilities, though? Why, particularly in the US, are we spending so much money on new facilities? Whereas, for example, a professional sports team may only spend 10 years in a facility and then they want a new one. Why not just upgrade? Depending on the facility, especially older ones, something that we're dealing with here at UC with a much older facility, it's estimated that it would cost 25% more than a new facility for upgrading of facilities. That's not about the UC one. That's in general across the board. It is estimated that for many facilities, it would cost 25% more than it would cost to build a new facility. What are some of the trends that we look at that are happening in regards to facilities? Obviously, one of them is technology. We know that that's affecting all of our lives in very different ways. So stadiums and arenas are using new technology just like anyone else and any other business. Some of the things that they're specifically using them for, and this is not an exhaustive list, but some of those things include for marketing purposes, ticketing. There are plenty of places now where you do not have a hard ticket. It's on your phone. You walk up, there's a barcode, they can scan it, whatever they need to do. There's no paper ticket whatsoever. They're using it for entertainment pieces. What is it that they might have as far as marketing and promotional videos? What is it that they might offer entertainment-wise within the stadium, whether it's video boards, as we've seen with Dallas Stadium. That huge board is an attraction and is a talking piece. What other types of things are they doing for entertainment with technology? All kinds of possibilities. Concessions ordering. There are plenty of facilities now where a person can sit in her seat, order concessions over the phone, over the web, go to the concession stand to pick it up, and there's a special pickup line only. So you're not ordering, it's a little faster. You can also, depending on the price that you're paying for your seat, there are stadiums and arenas where a person can order concessions over the phone, have it delivered to their seats. Viewing and selecting of season tickets has been going on for quite a while on the internet. So a virtual tour of it, a person can see, okay, if I purchase this seat in section A and row 10, what does my view look like? Then they can pick a different seat and they can look at the playing surface, whether it's an ice hockey rink, a football field, or a basketball court, whatever it might be. They can see what their view would look like from those particular seats. Very common use. Virtual tours, not just of seats, but of the entire facility. What does it look like? Where is it that I'm going to come in? Especially as new facilities are being built. They want people to get excited about them, to know what is coming. There were various ones that I've seen for the new Mets ballpark when it was being built. The Barclays Arena that is going to be built in Brooklyn for the New Jersey Nets. Various things. They had virtual suites, those types of things. Virtual tours, very, very common use of technology. Another big trend is green facilities, not just in sports, but just in general. One of the great buildings to look at as you're doing your research for your projects that you might want to consider is there's a Bank of America building that was recently built in Manhattan, recently opened. Phenomenal use of various technologies to allow this facility to cut down on water usage, cut down on power usage, various things. Something to consider when you're looking at working on your facility plan is you might want to check out various articles about that Bank of America building in New York City. When we talk about green facilities, one of the things we address is sustainability. And the definition here is, again, what is that comprehensive philosophy that a venue has, where they are going to use various environmental friendly materials that hopefully are going to help reduce their footprint, their carbon footprint, or help reduce their energy usage. That's what this definition is the one that we talk about with regards to sustainability for any facility, not just sports facilities. For a green facility, the general definition for this, or one definition that can be used, is that it's going to be a structure that is designed, built, renovated, operated, or reused in an ecological or resource efficient manner. When we get into sports facilities, that's one that has become very big. It's relatively new to a lot of facilities. It's relatively new to sports facilities. Facilities may have been involved in recycling programs, but maybe that was as far as they went. You will see in the past 10 to 15 years, there's been a huge trend, and there will continue to be a huge trend to change that, to have facilities be much greener. For green facilities, there is a group called the U.S. Green Building Council. They set various standards and criteria for a building to be considered green. And they are the ones who can see, okay, does this facility meet those stipulations? If a facility does, then they can be LEED or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design certified. The USGBC is the organization that certifies them, and it actually gives them, their standards gives them the ability to have measurable outcomes to see if a facility truly is a green facility. Now, when we talk about sports, we want to look at the Nationals ballpark, home of the Washington Nationals in Washington, D.C., the Major League Baseball team. That opened in 2008. It cost $611 million to build. And it was the first sports facility to be LEED or LEED certified as a green facility. So this was a huge step for a lot of sports organizations. For green facilities, again, one of the things to consider is it may cost more money up front to put various things into a building to help it become a green facility. But in the long run, those will pay off, is the idea behind all of this. Green facilities, some of the different things that people will use is active solar. So they're using solar energy for power, for heat, for cooling, getting their energy from actual solar panels. Passive solar is dealt with in facility design. So when you see a facility that has a lot of natural light, uses a lot of glass or other materials where light can come in, that means that obviously in the daytime they're not going to have to use as much electricity. They may not need lights at all. That's what we mean by passive solar design. When we're talking about recycling with water and various other materials, there could be different things with wastewater, obviously generated from concessions, from the restroom facilities, those types of things. How can a facility work to um, lessen that? How can they deal with wastewater in a better manner? What types of recycled materials are they using? When they put the seats in an arena or a stadium, if they're plastic, are they using recycled plastic? Are they using recycled metal? Are there various other recycled materials throughout that are being used to build this? We can talk about conservation and conserving energy, conserving water. May use low water usage toilets or sinks, various things like that to help cut down on the energy costs for a facility. They might use low energy lighting, various types of things that facilities can do, and that's one of the things you'll want to research, all of these different green aspects as you're working on your facility plan. And again, what types of environmentally friendly materials and systems are out there, whether it's in the way that they were manufactured or the way that they're going to be used in the facility. Another trend deals with security. The first thing to know is that there is not going to be any solution to every possible security issue or security risk. There are just too many things that could possibly happen. But one of the important things is that a facility has to have a plan for when something happens. It is inevitable that something is going to happen. Sometimes it's an extent to what degree is it? And is it caused by one person or caused by many people? What does that look like? Those types of plans need to be put in place, and staff need to be trained on those. It's not something that can be assumed. It's something that needs to be drilled into the people who are working on this. There's been criticism from folks in Europe, especially after the London subway bombings, that in America there's too much focus on prevention when most people acknowledge that there's no way to prevent everything that's going to happen. The criticism is that facilities in America need to have a plan for when something happens. They need to train people. They need to make sure that they're aware. Those first few minutes, or first several minutes, or first several hours, depending on the magnitude, could be the difference between something that is serious and something that is catastrophic. And so that's why when working in facilities, you need to ask, what are the plans? What are the emergency plans if something happens? Who knows these? How often do they go through those types of training to address those plans? How often is the plan revisited, revamped, edited, reevaluated? Security is a big trend with facilities. Some common security precautions that facilities are taking is you will see a lot more barriers, whether it's formal barriers and they look like barriers or whether they are large planters. Different things to limit access to how close can a truck or a vehicle get without supervision. So it pushes people back away from the facility, or it pushes vehicles away from the facility so they cannot get that close to possibly, heaven forbid, detonate an explosive. Over stadiums, they have put requests in for no-fly zones. Obviously, that's kind of I think that would be common sense for most people that they would put in those requests, but it needs to be stated nonetheless. Metal detectors. There were even lots of locations with NFL games that were doing pat downs. In Tampa, there was a person who sued and won, so they stopped pat downs at Tampa Stadium, but every other stadium in the NFL had pat downs, and there were other legal cases that came up where people tried to sue other clubs, other teams, but they lost those lawsuits. So metal detectors you will see quite often. You might even see pat downs depending on where it is and what the event is. The bigger the event, the Olympics, Super Bowl, World Cup, you might even see more tendency towards heavier security. Limiting bag size is one. Although it's frustrating when a person is attending a sports event, there are reasons that they don't allow backpacks or large bags into a facility. I know when I've attended games at Yankee Stadium, I've had to check, if I'm coming from work, I've had to go across the street to different facilities who provide bag check. They will not let it in. There was an unfortunate situation at a football game between, I think it was Oklahoma and Kansas State, in somewhere between 2005 2008. I'll look up the exact date and let you know, where a young man, they ruled it as suicide, but they had determined that he had tried to get in the facility, but he had a backpack full of explosives that were detonated. There is a reason that they do not allow large bags in there. These are just some of the common security precautions. It is not an exhaustive list. This kind of sums up that first introductory aspect for this. We will discuss on Wednesday again what questions you might have with regard to different things with facilities. I would encourage you to read this week's Sports Business Journal with the in-depth section. Every week they have a different topic that is covered in depth. This week's, the first week of class, happens to be about sports facilities. So that's something we really want to read and discuss, and we will spend a great deal of time on Friday looking through those articles and discussing the content. Hopefully this will be beneficial. I welcome your feedback to tell me, is this a better way possibly to go over material so that then in class we have time for discussion and questions rather than spending time in class going over details like this.